Hey guys, this is Ash with Gamers Compete. This is part 4 of our Overwatch Complete Series. We are going to be continuing in the basics. If you haven't seen the previous videos, go ahead and check them out in the playlist. And so we are going to be going over the distinct roles in Overwatch. So there are already 3 broken down roles by default that you can see here. There's tank, damage dealer, and support. And within each role there are 2 subclasses. So we'll start with tank. There is main tank and off tank. So main tanks are going to be characters like Reinhardt and Orisa, who you can use to make space and decide where you kind of hold, where you're going to hold the choke. You're going to decide when you push in, when to back out, and your job is to enable your team basically. Then there are off tanks, characters like Diva, Roadhog, Sigma excels at being an off tank, but he can also situationally be played as a main tank. Same thing with kind of Wrecking Ball can be used to make space in tandem with a main tank, or he can be used as a main tank in some dive comps. Winston can be used in a dive comp as a main tank, or he can be used as an off tank to dive Widowmakers and groups of squishies. Zarya is an off tank. She can be used in tandem with Reinhardt, things like that, or maybe like a Doomfist to kind of dive in, get some charge, and push in with that. And so the main tanks are going to enable their team. The off tanks are going to enable the main tank generally and be kind of heavy duty damage dealers. Like they're kind of just tanky damage dealers that can, or they have utility that allows them to make space. The off tank is generally going to be the role that will peel for the backline support. The only time I would argue that's not the case would be maybe Ryan Zarya, but even then, sometimes you might still want to peel. Then we have damage dealers. Damage dealers, same thing. We have a main damage dealer, which is going to be consistent output, and then we have an off damage dealer or a pick damage dealer. So pick damage dealers are going to be characters like Doomfist, Widowmaker, HANZO sometimes, things like that. They're going to be kind of the, I guess you could call them like assassins. They're going to be characters that can get a pick and then your team is up. So the benefit to having one of the enemy team members down instantly before the team fight or at the very beginning of the team fight is clearly that you're going to have the numbers advantage. So if you're going into the team fight and Widowmaker, say, gets 2 lucky shots, kills 2 people, then now it's a 4v6 and your team has a 2-person number advantage, and the Widowmaker can continue to put pressure on the enemy team, or they can push forward and make sure those picks stay down. Then you have consistent damage characters like that have less of a burst damage necessarily and more of a consistent output, or are going to have get the most value out of kind of being in the brawl. So characters like Junkrat, who's going to excel from being in the fight, spamming into the enemy team with all of his bombs. So just for the sake of it, I'm not going to aim. We'll just say I'm spamming into the team fight right here as Junkrat. I'm just going to spam all these bombs into the team fight. And it's going to do a lot of burst damage to the enemy team, break a lot of shields, things like that. Soldier 76 is going to be a consistent damage. He's going to sit there, kind of break down shields with his primary, or he can go to burst fire to kill the enemy team.
You ain't seen me angry.
Mei will excel from being in the team fight. She can clearly slow the enemy team, so if they have a shield tank, they're going to have to block the Mei, which necessarily the Mei could go around the opposite side so that the Rhine has to turn around to avoid being frozen. So that way the rest of your team kind of gets the advantage and can push in, things like that. Then you have healers. So as far as the support goes, that's going to be your healing characters. So you're going to have main healers, characters like Ana, Baptiste, Brigitte now with her rework, Mercy, and Moira, who are going to have huge, well, not huge, but higher numeric healing than an off healer, and potentially a little bit less support, or just a little bit different. Baptiste being the exception for main healers. Main healers don't generally have a defensive ultimate, so Baptiste has Immortality Field, which is similar to like a sort of pseudo defensive ult, but it has a 200 health that can quickly be burst down by the enemy team. that is sometimes why you'd want to take a support or an off support like Zenyatta or Lucio, because with their ultimates, things like Transcendence or Beat, you basically get a huge cushion to block the enemy team ultimates. So if you're stuck in a Graviton Surge, Zarya's ultimate, and they throw another damaging ultimate into you, and so you don't have the chance to split, or if it's a Hanzo's Dragon Strike, things like that, dropping a defensive ultimate can win or lose you the fight. And basically you can use it as a kind of like a reflexive thing to counter out an offensive ultimate in most cases. So in general, you're going to want to run, of course, with experience, you'll kind of feel out and kind of get the feel and know when you want to run what, but in general, you're going to want to run a main tank and an off tank. So if you're on attack on Hanamura, you might want to do maybe Reinhardt and Zarya. So Reinhardt's going to be the main tank, Zarya would be the off tank, and then for damage you might want to run Junkrat and Widowmaker. So in general, you'd want to run an off tank and a main tank. As far as damage goes, you don't generally want to have two off damage dealers, so you wouldn't necessarily want a Widowmaker and a Doomfist. There are exceptions. But if the enemy team runs maybe double shield, Widowmaker might not get much value, and Doomfist can't break the shields for Widowmaker in that comp, so you wouldn't have enough damage. So then you might want to run something maybe like Junkrat Doomfist or McCree Doomfist, things like that. Hanzo Doomfist. Then as far as supports go, I'm seeing a lot of main supports being run together. So you'll see like Ana Baptiste on defense, or you'll see maybe like Moira Mercy, things like that. As far as defensive ultimates go, I generally will look and see if the enemy team has some ultimate combinations. So ult combos like there's Grab Dragon, which is, I mentioned earlier, it's Zarya's Graviton Surge with Hanzo's Dragon Strike. And so the reason I might grab a defensive ultimate in that situation is because if we get stuck in that grab and we don't have something to defend it, it might wipe our entire team. Or another solution is sometimes I might grab a Baptiste instead, because then I still have that high healing, I get high damage, but then if I put my immortality field behind a wall when we get stuck in the ultimate, we can still survive because the enemy team will have to go all the way around and break the immortality field. It really just depends on the situation. But those are basically the roles, and I'll see you guys later.